Your time this afternoon and hope that you find the session interesting and informative. If you have questions, please use the question box on your screen. We'll answer any questions as we move through the presentation as well as at the end. We also have a small survey that will appear as the presentation ends and would appreciate your feedback if you have any. Today we're going to provide you with a quick introduction to CHP, present some of the challenges and transparency differences in Europe, as well as a simulation of the price impact of CHP production. At the end, we will briefly talk about Genscape's CHP solution that was the outcome of our research. Just a quick note about Genscape in case you're not familiar with us. We monitor the power grid and are able to provide power production information in real time for individual transmission lines and power plants. Just a brief background on CHP. CHP stands for Central or Combined Heat and Power. This kind of generation provides electricity or power generation as well as heat from a single fuel source. Despite the look and feel of a conventional power plant, these units are more efficient but have higher installation costs as additional infrastructure is needed. Genscape's interest in CHP generation comes from client interest as well as price discovery interest. When running a model for the Felix price at EEX, it was difficult for me to estimate on a day-to-day level what this part of the German supply stack was doing. Only in recalibrating intraday pricing, Genscape generation, and matching power flows was I able to really discover anything about this part of the stack. So we embarked upon this research to help us and our customers understand the value of energy in the German market and to find out what this portion of the supply stack might be doing given the challenging complexity of the market and the increase of renewable generation. When you compare German CHP generation with other Northern European countries, you'll see that the Netherlands and Denmark both have a large amount of this type of generation in their supply stacks, with Poland not far behind. In terms of transparency, of the 452 designated CHP units in Germany, between 180 and 190 units are below the 100 megawatt limit and represent just over 6 gigawatts of generating capacity. On the low side of the spectrum, there are 20 units below 10 megawatts, representing just over 100 megawatts. This is important when it comes to the current transparency discussion going on in Europe, and specifically in Germany. So you wonder which of these units will need to comply under the remit mandates currently being discussed. In terms of publicly available data, Denmark's EnergyNet has the most granular and detailed public data set, reporting CHP generation every 5 minutes. Genscape hasn't found any public production data for the Netherlands or Poland. German data is available through the Bundesnetzagentur with monthly granularity by fuel and technology type, which we will detail later in the presentation. This monthly data set is updated with a 3-month delay and is available going back to 2003. Data on some of the larger units in Germany is available through owners on the EEX Transparency website or as part of the 58% monitored by Genscape. In Germany, with the increase of renewable generation and the promotion of CHP power production, every part of the generation supply stack is important to determine price and balance the grid. CHP generation represents 16% of conventional production in the winter and 8% in the summer. With the large clean-dark spread, the conventional generation used to balance the grid against the intermittent renewable resources is increasingly coal-fired generation or imports. CHP generation includes approximately 105 natural gas-fired units, and that's just over 9 gigawatts of generation. This is gas-fired generation that remains in the supply stack despite the fuel spread when needed for heat. In the chart, you'll see that the monthly power production figures from the government are used. CHP power production has remained fairly steady, as has the percentage of production in red against the drop in total production. When researching the German CHP fleet, the breakout of technology and fuel type shows that the larger the unit, the more that unit runs for power production, and the smaller the unit, the more they run for heat. In this slide, you see that 90% of the installed CHP capacity are units of 10 megawatts and higher, and the bulk of those running in power control mode or for electricity first and heat second. The industrial mining sector is excluded since they consume most of the power they produce, and they aren't included in the monthly generation figures posted by the government. Those are posted under a different name. In terms of fuel type, you see that the largest units are coal-fired generators. The 40 to 45 units that burn hard coal represent about 12 gigawatts of generating capacity. At this point, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Walter Jones, who with a team did the bulk of the research into the German CHP fleet.
Thank you, Tadan. Genscape researchers looked at each CHP designated unit to understand demand sector, general supply or industry and mining, and their operation mode, power control mode or heat control mode. We found that 8 gigawatts of the 49 gigawatts of total capacity is in industry and mining sector, and 15 gigawatts in heat control mode and general supply. The government monthly power production data only includes general supply CHP, and they publish annual production data for industry and mining CHP. The government unit list provides geography information for each unit, so the CHP capacity can be assigned to each TSO. The government provides monthly production by fuel and by unit type. In order to compare this data to the unit list, we combine the fuel type data and the unit type data as shown in these tables. Before January 2013, the data set included more detailed information about combustion engine generators. Here's a plot of the raw government data showing unit technology designations. ST is steam turbine, GT is gas turbine, CCGT is combined cycle gas turbine. Looking at the blue line on the plot, higher natural gas prices may have caused CCGT to be lower for the summer of 2012 and 2013. This plot shows monthly data with technology type and fuel type combined. We noticed fuel switching in the summer of 2012 when GT was low and steam turbine coal was high compared to the summer before. You can see steam turbine lignite do not produce much power while producing heat. So a lot of the large lignite units that are designated CHP are not included in the monthly CHP numbers because they aren't running at capacity as CHP units. From the government unit list, we have CHP capacity by TSO and by type. Steam turbine coal units are in all 4 TSOs, while steam turbine lignite units are in Ampere and 50 Hertz TSOs. Transnet BW contains mostly steam turbine coal units. This plot also includes intermittent resources, solar and wind capacity by TSO, where TNET and 50 Hertz have the largest share. We will show that CHP is important when forecasting German power prices. Genscape looked at EEX day-ahead prices and considered a weekday last December to investigate the EEX bid-ask curves. One of the difficulties in understanding power prices is that only 1/5 of the power demand is cleared on the exchange. On December 3rd at 12 o'clock, only 19% of the ENSO-E German load was covered by the EEX supply curve. Renewables also make power price forecasting difficult since they have guaranteed feed-in and their schedule depends on day-ahead weather forecasts. To demonstrate the value of CHP in the supply stack, hourly power prices were simulated for December 3rd, 2013 using fundamental analysis, where the hourly load intersects the hourly supply curve. For the fundamental analysis, we add the EEX renewable production and Genscape estimated CHP to the supply stack. The plot shows you their hourly production, which was incorporated into the supply stack before any conventional supply. The 12 o'clock supply curve is shown here with corresponding ENSO-E German load. Notice the 8 gigawatts of CHP in green is after renewable production and before waste, biomass, and nuclear production on the supply curve. The 38 euro per megawatt hour simulated price is 5 euro below the EEX price. The hourly supply curve consists of a sorted unit list with several modifications, namely EX Renewable and Genscape CHP are added to each hour. A power production cost is estimated for each unit. Industry and mining CHP units are not included because they use much of their power and they don't sell it to the grid. Large CHP units on the high voltage grids are treated as non-CHP units. Here we have the simulated prices in green compared to the EAX prices in black. For the red and blue curves, Genscape hourly CHP production was replaced by a constant 5 gigawatts and a constant 16 gigawatts. These simulations show the power prices are very sensitive to CHP power production. When there's a large amount of CHP running, the prices are much lower. When there's less CHP power running, the prices are higher and more volatile.
Dan, we can't hear you. I'm not sure if you're speaking. Are you on mute?
So sorry about that. On this slide, as part of Genscape's research, we looked at the plants already monitored. At the beginning of the summer of 2013, Genscape coverage included 23 gigawatts of CHP designated units. But as we indicated earlier in the presentation, most of this generation is above the 200 megawatt capacity level, meaning that they are power sector units first and produce little heat. In order to gain more insight into the units that are included in the heating sector or district heat units and comprise the bulk of the monthly reported figures, we decided to deploy more monitors. The yellow circles indicate where additional monitoring was identified, and that monitoring is expected to complete uniform coverage to reflect size, technology type, and a geographic perspective. So many of the targeted plants are 30 megawatts to 120 megawatt gas plants. Here you can see a list of the identified units, their location and capacity. We've identified an additional 21 units for just over 3 gigawatts of capacity. Those are on the monitor list. So far, we've installed 7 units with an additional 8 to be released soon over the next 4 to 5 months. So we're moving through this. And you can see on the slide which ones we've targeted for the different TSO areas.
As part of the research, Genscape decided to model the CHP portion of the supply stack. This helps us identify which units we need to monitor and how to bring monthly production data into our hourly CHP estimate. A statistical model was created that uses hourly heating degrees from temperature, EEX power prices, natural gas prices, emission prices, and Genscape monitored power production. The model was improved by splitting the year into a winter model and a summer model. The statistical models were transformed into an optimization problem, so the monthly sum of hourly production approximated the government monthly data. We call this model a nowcast since it uses the current observed temperature, prices, and Genscape monitored power. The CHP model delivers hourly CHP power estimates for steam turbine coal, steam turbine lignite, steam turbine gas or waste, combustion engines, and gas turbine by TSO. We've already shown how these estimates can be incorporated into the supply stack.
Walter, we actually have a question. Which CHP units does your CHP model cover in the supply stack?
We can send out a list of those units, the exact units that are in the model. They're mostly gas units in cities. They're district heat units, but we can send out a list for anybody who would like that list of exactly what's in the model.
Great, thanks.
Our first model attempt was a monthly model that was calibrated to the German monthly CHP production data set provided by the government. This chart shows the results of that modeling effort. The dotted line is the CHP model results. Adding Genscape monitored plants to the model improved the fit to the monthly government data. The area improves particularly for gas turbine and steam turbine coal when the inclusion of monitored data.
We have another question, which is great. The question is, you are saying that we have 49 gigawatts of installed capacity in Germany. Is it really that much? And it is what is designated as CHP. So there are 49 gigawatts when you look at the list of 452 units. But as Walter has been saying, there aren't that many units, and there isn't that much gigawatts when you look at the monthly production data. Is that what I'm saying right, Walter?
Yes, that's correct. There's much less power being produced by the CHP units relative to the capacity of all the units that are labeled CHP. Many of the large coal and lignite plants have, they may have 4 units in a plant. 2 of them will be labeled CHP. They really only run one of the units as CHP, and that if it's if it's operated by power mode, then it's not going to produce much heat. Therefore, there's not much power going to the CHP numbers, the government numbers for that plant, even though it's a large capacity for that unit. Let's see.
Right. The next question. Sorry, Walter. We have another question. Is that 49 gigawatts of heat or power? And the 49 gigawatts, I believe, represents the designation of CHP to the government. So it includes both heat and power.
Well, the gigawatts is just the power portion only. The government data gives you the power and the heat separate in their data set. So we're just interested in the power only.
Great. And then the next question is, and can you cover 90% of the actual production? And we're not intending to cover 90%. What we're intending to cover is a good cross-section of the different fuels and technology type by geography so that we can estimate the rest of the fleet using other data. Does that sound right, Walter?
Yes.
Correct. We do scale it up. So we had another question that we scale it up, and we do. All right, Walter.
All right. Once we broke the data down further, we were able to estimate the production of an hour on an hourly basis by TSO. At this point, the model results were better if we divided the large north to south TNet TSO into 2 regions, for TNet north and TNet south. This allows us to account for temperature variation and CHP capacity differences. This plot shows the influence of average heating degrees on the CHP estimates.
Okay, and we have another question here. What besides temperature did you notice affected the TNet TSO with respect to north and south divisions?
Yeah, looking at the CHP capacities, there was twice as much gas CHP in the south as the north. So it was worthwhile splitting them up, treating them differently.
Great.
In addition to the CHP nowcast results shown in our Power RT console, we also provide a CHP forecast 14 days ahead. The forecast model input-outputs are the same as the nowcast model, except the model is ran with forecasted input. The forecasted inputs include hourly heating degrees derived from Global Weather Corporation's temperature forecast, daily clean spread, daily Genscape monitor production, both forecasts using wind speed forecasts, solar irradiance forecasts, EEX natural gas futures, and the current EEX emission price. The solid line on the plot shows the nowcast results, and the dotted lines are the 14-day CHP forecast made on January 18, 2014 at 0 hour. Notice the errors grow slowly as time goes forward.
Okay, we have a couple more questions. The first one is, do you have details on the relationship between CHP and temperature? And we definitely did take that into account in the model, right, Walter?
Yes. That's the main driving force in the model is temperature, then clean spread, and then the Genscape monitor plant. So the model is dominated by temperature. There's no question about that.
So we have another question about how much percentage falls in terms of industrial use and how much is in the municipal numbers. And we can also provide, if you guys are interested, a list, the 452 units that are designated, so you can take a look at that. And I don't know, Walter, did you pull down the list for the industrials as well?
You mean the capacity, industrial versus general supply?
Yes.
The earlier slide had that. What was the capacity of general supply?
I think it was,
49
yes.
Altogether, what was general supply? 8, 5 or 8?
Yeah, it is 8 gigawatts per industry, for industry.
So that's 8 into 49. So it's a small portion. And I think that most of the industry mining plants, they're using the bulk of their power and they're not selling it to the grid. So we're not including those in the model, and we didn't include those in our supply stack, our price simulations we showed you earlier.
Did you notice anything about the weekends, Walter, when you were doing the modeling?
Yeah, of course, weekend effects don't show up in the monthly data you're calibrating to, but it does impact the model because the clean spread is different on the weekends, so you do see less production on the weekends. Some of the coal and gas plants will produce less heat and less power on the weekends. So the model does change on the weekends.
Okay.
This plot shows the CHP forecast average error percentage relative to the nowcast results for November 2013. For each hour of November, the CHP forecast is compared to the nowcast results. Steam turbine, coal, and gas turbine have the largest error percentage after 150 hours. These errors are mainly caused by errors in the temperature forecast.
So the Genscape CHP solution includes monitored plant-by-plant information or data, as well as the nowcast estimate of the rest of the fleet through the nowcast model, and then a 14-day hourly forecast rolling forward every hour. All the model results for the nowcast and forecast include granularity down to the fuel technology type, as well as by TSO. So there's a lot of different data points that we provide. Tenet there is provided divided into north and south. So you do have 2 different buckets for Tenet. As the monitors go into the ground and are included in the model, that data will really increase in terms of the accuracy of the nowcast and the forecast. So we should see this model improve going forward in time as we add more and more monitors. The monitors also will provide additional clarity on if these units are able to help balance the grid against the intermittent resources that we're seeing. Currently, that's really an unknown, and that's something that I've been interested in finding out. We may not see any change in the way the smaller low-voltage units run, but through some of the monitors, we should get a better understanding of their operational changes in terms of balancing the grid. So we've come to the end of the presentation. It was pretty quick. Let's see if we can answer some of the other questions that have come through. So one of the questions is, does the monthly data that you calibrate to have an hourly resolution? And no, I don't believe that it does. I don't know, Walter, if you want to clarify on that.
No, it's just a monthly number by unit type and by fuel burned.
And one of the parts of the research that we did was to model the monthly number first and then take it down using what we knew about how this fleet was running and the temperatures, take it down to an hourly granularity. Right, Walter?
That's correct.
Let's see. Somebody is looking for a rule of thumb for what power price and or what temperature most German CHPs switch on and off. So, Walter, I do believe that the main point in switching heating degree days is 65 degrees Fahrenheit?
Yeah, that's correct. Last September, it was toward the third week of September is when CHP started ramping up. What temperature is that in Celsius? When did they start ramping up? It was around 40, 45 degrees Fahrenheit. What's that Celsius? Shoot. Is that 5 Celsius or something?
Yeah.
If you look back at your weather, your average daily temperatures, it was the third week of September is when the units started to ramp up, we observed.
So the data that we provide, just to clarify a little bit, we did have a question, which data on Genscape is coming from monitoring and which one is coming from the forecast model? So the information that you'll see in terms of monitored data looks like any other Genscape monitored data. With the CHP generation, there is the use of more infrared technology, looking for heat signatures on stacks. So as a Genscape customer, you would get that individual plant monitored and included in the fuel stack just like any other Genscape unit. Then the model results are in the nowcast, which then takes those units and puts it up into an estimate for that entire region, as well as the forecast. I hope that that's a little bit more clear. One of the other questions that we have here, Walter, is do you see a profile between evening and during the day?
The CHP model follows the temperatures, and we have 10 or so IR cameras out on power plants, CHP plants so far, and I've watched the stacks on those plants, and I don't see a daily trend much really. It really does follow temperature, as far as I can tell. That they run these plants according to the heat demand.
And there is a seasonality to it as well, right? Right, Walter? There's a point when you hit that heating degree net 0 point where you do need to change the model up a little bit.
Yes, the April 1st we switched to a summer model, and in the end of October we switched to a winter model. So there are just different statistical model how we weight the temperatures and the fuel prices and the Genscape monitored plants.
Great. So as a follow-up to this presentation, we will be sending out the slides and a recording to everybody who attended. So we can go ahead and do that. We did have one more last question here. So how do you deal with a very cold April? I think that has to do again with the heating degrees, right, Walter? So we can choose when we want to switch the model over?
Yeah, the model will still respond. I mean, it will still respond to cold weather in the summer model. It's just to fit the monthly data, it fits better with 2 separate models, but it'll definitely respond to temperature, summer or winter.
We got a question. It says, can you tell us more about the relationship between solar production and CHP production? And we can do capacity analysis in that area, but until we really get the monitors out there and watch how they ramp against intermittent resources, there's not a lot that we can say. That's one of the reasons that I'm very curious to get the monitors out there and see if they might have more of a key role in balancing the grid than we might think. In terms of where you can find the monthly data, that was another question. We can send that out to you and include that information with the slide deck. So we can go ahead and send to you where we find that monthly generation data, or production data, I should say, from the Bundesnetz Agentur. And if you're interested in a trial of our Nowcast or Forecast CHP product, please go ahead and get in touch with us. Once again, I appreciate your time this afternoon, and there will be a quick survey at the end. So any questions that come in from now on, we're happy to go ahead and get back to you one-on-one and send you the information that you're asking for. I appreciate your time, and please get in touch with us if you're interested in seeing a trial.